What does our childhood experiences have to do with the current relationships we have with our businesses? Well, your business is an extension of who you are, and trauma can show up in various ways as a business owner. And it can look like burnout, overwhelm, boundary issues, and at times just feeling like you aren't getting ahead, even if you've tried adopting the entrepreneurial mindset and trying so many different strategies. Hi, I'm Lydia Lee. I'm the work reinvention coach and solopreneur strategist at Screw the Cubicle. And my mission for this channel and the work that I've been doing as my life's work has always been to help purpose driven folks like you to launch and grow a meaningful business that's specifically designed from your genius zone, which is your unique skills, your values, and your personality type. And of course, the impact that you truly want to make with your work. And if you're brand new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe and the notification bell button because I release really awesome interviews with corporate escapees and excellent experts every single month, as well as helpful, valuable videos to help you transition from the corporate 9 to 5 and start building the dream business that you've been dreaming to build. Today, I'm so excited to share with you an interview I did with Nicole Lewis-Keeber, who is a business therapist and a mindset coach who supports entrepreneurs to create and nurture healthy relationships with their businesses. In this conversation, she really reveals what big T and little t trauma is, how it can be manifesting in your business, and also the first steps in identifying how your past may be dictating how you're currently behaving in your business and how you're getting to your success. This is such a valuable conversation and one that I wish we were having more often in the business space. Enjoy this conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Nicole. This has been a conversation that's a long time coming because we've had several conversations together, and I knew that I had to have you on the show to dive even deeper into the great work that you do. And I can really already feel that we're going to have a great conversation because it's two topics I love talking about, which is therapy and business. And you are certainly the person at the crossroad for that. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun to have those previous conversations, and I'm sure we'll have a equally interesting one today.
Yes, totally. Now, I want to start a little bit about sort of how you got to where you are now. You know, a bit of an origin story on, you were a clinical supervisor and therapist previously in your career, and what sort of motivated you to take a leap from that particular vocation into the work you're doing today?
I think, like with many people who are 18 plus years into a career they're choosing, right, that feels like the right thing for them at that time. I found myself at a place where I was feeling pretty burnt out by the work that I was doing. You know, the systems
Mm,
around mental health are not geared for making sure the people who are providing it are getting self-care themselves, And so it was not sustainable for me anymore, emotionally, physically, spiritually, even. And so I decided to take a step back from direct practice and took a very easy and low intensity job behind the scenes for an insurance company, so I could work from home just for a little while to kind of regroup. And when I did that, it gave me some space to think about, do I want to continue in mental health? Do I still want to be a therapist? What do I want to do? And I knew I couldn't make that decision myself. So, like many people, I actually ended up choosing a coach to work with as opposed to going to see another therapist. Because as a therapist, I was in therapy,
mhm.
and it changed everything. I was able to see that I don't have to give up my passion for working with people and helping them, but I could do it in a different way. And so that was kind of that intersection of me seeing myself as a therapist and someone who loves personal development and helping people reach a new level of healing, that it could be done in a new way. And so I wanted to explore what that would look like for me. So that's kind of how I got there and started
Mm.
my journey.
I love that you didn't, throw the baby out of the bathwater, so to speak, because that happens a lot, doesn't it, to people that are a little burnt out from their current career. They've been doing it for 20 years and they're like, I don't know how to do anything differently than this thing, but I'm not quite sure if I want to continue having this relationship, or should I have a divorce from my career, right? But and as you know, with my work, work reinvention is a huge part of my theme, because
Mhm.
I do think that nothing has been a waste of time, that, a lot of what we've accumulated from childhood to adulthood is value. Are the sort of, I look at it like a little tool belt around our waist of like, we've gathered all these tools, and what we can do as adults is redeploy these tools in a meaningful direction, but we must first kind of understand, what is meaningful for us to do. Now, when you decided to utilize these tools of therapy into supporting entrepreneurs, right? Supporting people that have these big minds and hearts to do amazing things in the world. What made you choose entrepreneurs and business as the niche, in a way, to support people in this, what you call this emotional landscape, right? In order to reach their next stage of success or whatever goals that they have. What prompted you to go that direction? Is it because you were seeing entrepreneurs not focusing on the right things, or did something frustrate you in the marketplace where you're like, I can't believe people aren't talking about this? Because I know usually meaning can be brewed from anger and frustration, in a place that we're like, I want to fill that gap. How did that sort of pan out for you?
Part of it picked me, and part of it was physician heal thyself. So, when I started my business, I actually started out as a money mindset coach, and it was very coach oriented, very much about, law of attraction. It was very, very money mindset. Like the training I went through was very geared towards just that one thing. And then, my clinician's lens kicked in, and I started to see the people I was working with who were attracted to working under that topic were mostly people with small businesses and entrepreneurs, right? Or people who are in leadership positions that saw their leadership as a brand and they were monetizing it in different ways. And so we were working on money mindset, but it wasn't working for them. And they were having shame about the fact that the tips and tricks were not working for them. And what became very clear to me, because of my therapy background, is that they were actually having trauma responses in their money. It wasn't a mindset shift that they needed. And so I started kind of digging into like money trauma and, kind of playing around with that and looking at it. And then I did that for about 2 years. And one day I decided I'm either going to quit my business because I was very unhappy in it.
Mm.
Hadn't been a business owner before, right? I'd had this full career working for other people, and it's different when it's yours, right? It's very, very different. And so 2 years in, I was already feeling like, I didn't start my own business with this instability to, feel this way. And I recognized that I was actually recreating childhood trauma patterns within my own business. Again,
Mm.
it's one of those divine moments where you're like, what is that even possible? Like, who does that trauma? Like, it just, like all the fireworks. And because I was a therapist, I started to walk through it. If I'm feeling abused by my business, why would it be so? Well, it's so because this is a background I have. It's a pattern of childhood trauma. And so I started peeling back all the layers and looking through it and thinking, okay, so if this is what it is, then this means that trauma can play a part in the decisions you make in your business, the people that you hire, the people you work with, all the things. Like this big niche of mine just kind of like grew out of that awareness of my own. And my clients were also feeling the same thing, but they just couldn't name it. And
Mm.
so it started there, and it's just evolved. And that's why I say physician heal thyself. It was like I needed to work out some stuff in my business and I needed to fix some things. And so I walked along my clients. We kind of in those early years kind of did it together, so yeah, it's been really cool.
It's so true that, we are taught that we need to have an entrepreneurial success mindset. It's such a buzzword. It's probably a hashtag on Instagram, right?
Probably.
And I remember this myself because I've been an entrepreneur for almost 8 years. Longest relationship, by the way, I've ever had. And it's been an interesting journey because in the beginning of my inaugural years of being an entrepreneur, a lot of it was, I believe now looking in hindsight, looking back, I was actually bypassing a lot of the deep work that was really necessary. Because when I learned under, money mindset coaches and mindset coaches in general, a lot of it was sort of the message and the narrative of, just become a different person and think differently. And it sounds really beautiful because, yeah, that's true. We do need to think differently. Our thoughts, relate to our behaviors, and and our behaviors become sort of the feelings of trust and so forth. And it sounds lovely and romantic and where I want to be at that part, the other side of the rainbow. But you're right. There's a stuck point, and at times we can beat ourselves up even more when we can't absorb some of the information that we read about, that we know we should be adapting to, but somehow something invisible is sort of getting a hold of us. And we're like, logically, I know what I should be doing, but my entire physical body is reacting so badly, to what I have to do. And I think when people think about creating and growing, a successful business, they tend to think a lot about the nuts and bolts, right, of a profitable business model, and of course, right, this elusive, ever elusive entrepreneurial mindset to make it happen. And that mindset is defined so differently by different coaches, by different, service providers that do that work. I've really learned for myself that through going therapy in the last 8 years as well, in conjunction with running my business, that, in order for me to shift to a more successful mindset, I really had to investigate, the root of why I even think and behave in a certain way first, in order to kind of feel grounded, in knowing what I need to move forward without, falling back in default patterns. And I know that this is sort of why I was really attracted to your work, because you managed to kind of bridge that understanding and knowledge around trauma in business. And I want to talk about trauma to start, because I think when people hear that word, it's frightening and daunting. And then there's also people that will say, I had a great childhood. I think I had great parents that took care of me.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm traumatized. I don't have PTSD like a lot of the children that were abandoned and, rejected. So I know we've talked about, big T and little t trauma. Can you give us a little educational description of like what that looks like for people so that they can identify if trauma is happening in their business?
Yeah, and it's such an important place to start because so many of the people, including myself, I was a therapist sitting in a therapist's office, still not claiming the word trauma because it felt too big for the experiences that I had growing up that were definitely impacting my business. And I think that that's a really good example of, if I took the mic here, went out on the road and said, the street out here and said, hey, if I say the word trauma to you, what do you think? They're probably going to say things like big T trauma, big T traumas, which are post-traumatic stress or violence or child abuse, like all these really, big catastrophic violent things that, we as a society are only really kind of label trauma as those things, right? Which is why we need to educate people about what trauma is. So that is one type of trauma, that's big T trauma. But there's also something called little t or small t trauma. And a lot of people have it and they don't really realize that they have it because we kind of minimize it, or we kind of, sweep it under the rug, or we don't talk about it. And people will say, oh, I just had a bad childhood. Everybody had a bad childhood. Who didn't have a bully? Who didn't have this? And so they minimize these experiences, which we call small t trauma. And what they are is and the definition can run the gamut. I just finished reading the book, What Happened to You by Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry. And he said,
That's my next read.
It's such a good book. I think it is must reading for any, person in personal development, coach, anybody who's in healing, they really need to read it. But what Dr. Perry was saying is that even in the clinical world with the DSM-5, they couldn't agree on the definition of trauma. Like even they could not agree on what it was. So I like to say that small t trauma are cumulative experiences that we have in our younger years, like our formative years, where we're really kind of assessing who we are in the world, what's safe, who cares, who doesn't. And there's these experiences that maybe they make us feel less than or other, or they change how we see ourselves. But a lot of times people probably would not look at it as a trauma. For example, I had a learning difference growing up. So the school system that I was in had no idea how to teach me. And I'm 50. So, when I was in school, There were no IEPs or anything like that to help children who had learning differences. And so my school system did not know how to teach me. And I internalized that. And so I began to see myself as stupid, right? And that fear of not being smart enough plays itself out even still in my business, right? So that was a formulation of an identity of myself based upon the circumstances I had that were not necessarily true, but it was cumulative. Every day I went into that school building and I didn't know what was going on, it changed me. It changed my biochemistry. It changed how I see myself. It could be maybe you got bullied in the schoolyard. Maybe you had a parent who was sick and you had to grow up kind of quick. Maybe you moved around a lot and you were always the newest kid. Maybe you were a little different, and so you had trouble making friends. All these things that are seemingly insignificant to a lot of people, but can be hugely impactful to us. That is trauma, because our nervous system doesn't care that that's a 13-year-old in the cafeteria. It sees it as a threat and it holds on to it, and it creates a trauma response for us. And that changes how we see ourselves and how we respond to people and circumstances. And it informs our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors as adults, including your business. Yes, that 13-year-old in the cafeteria that was mean to you can, in fact, affect your business now. So
Right.
I think it's important for people to see that little t trauma is just as impactful. So I always say that big T trauma explodes, small t trauma erodes, but they're both strong enough to move a mountain, and we have to look
Mm,
at it.
mm. Well, you have a saying where you say, our inner kiddies, our inner kiddos
In a
become
kiddo,
part of
yeah.
our become part of our inner board of directors. Which,
Mm-hmm.
oh God, I can totally resonate with this now. I certainly didn't know that was going on before, and how that has showed up for me in my business in many years. And to be honest, I still navigate that now. I don't think it really truly goes away. And I think I've actually embracing that has been really healing for me, to not fight it and go, this is not meant to be happening, rather than actually I can have control over this and understand it more. And how that sort of has showed up in my own business is, I was, not a lot of people know this, but I was abandoned as a child, as an 11-year-old, to live with my father. And he had told me directly on the first day we moved in that he no longer wanted to be a father, and that we were roommates, and I can live at the house till I was ready to leave the house, but there would be no parental guidance going forward from that. And I never realized, of course, at the time, as an 11-year-old, I thought freedom, great. I didn't have a curfew. I didn't have any strict Asian parenting rules that I was used to growing up in. And it certainly showed up for me, in my adulthood, in my relationships with people, in my relationship with my business, and how it sort of seeped into how I behaved in my business was nothing was good enough for me. It was like I constantly needed to prove myself in my business. So I was unconsciously choosing the hardest things to do in my business as a way of sort of righting that wrong from the past,
Mm-hmm.
of regaining love and security from a father figure that I never got to have. And so in a way, I sort of did that in my business to regain love, or gain love and respect from my peers and my colleagues and my clients, by overdoing it, by laying my body on the line, and not having any healthy boundaries, because that was how I associated being loved, and accepted. Now, I want you to explain to us, now that's my story, but what are some common things that you've seen as you've been working with, different entrepreneurs and business owners, in terms of how their childhood experiences have to do with their current relationship with their business?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? How does it show up in our business that we may not be realizing is going on?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to identify that a lot of people are entrepreneurial. I mean, I've seen so many businesses that were founded from a place of wounding in our childhood, where we decided we're going to rebel against something, we're going to show somebody something, we're going to prove something, we're going to, make sure that we're safe and cared for because I don't trust anyone else. So a lot of founders found their businesses on this childhood wound, right? And so and so then what happens is that they create this relationship with their business where, they're constantly striving, but never getting to the end goal, because they're trying to solve an emotional issue with a business solution. Doesn't work that
Right.
way. right? And so the relationship that they have with their business sometimes mimics a relationship that they had with someone in some attached or bonding, you're supposed to be bonding relationship. And so for me and my business, I had created a really demanding and demeaning business. Every day I woke up and felt like I was already a failure. It's my business. Like, there's no reason for me to feel that way. It was mine. There's nobody else here but me. But it was a mother figure that I had created this relationship with my business where it was like, I can do no right. There is no right answer here. I will always spin my wheels and try and figure this out, and I can't win. Right. I have, seen people who will, recreate a business where they saw this model of power over structures of, I'm the boss, you do what I say, shut up, don't argue with me, don't have any ownership over anything, no agency. So they create this relationship with their business where they're replicating a position of power to feel safe because they didn't feel safe in their relationships with their parents growing up or caregivers. And so they create this really dominant persona, and they relate to their business and the people in it as if, just from this really, this place of proving their power constantly. If I can get you to do this, and this means I'm powerful. And so there's so many ways that I've seen people recreate relationships within their business, even narcissistic best friends growing up. And the next thing you know, your business has this personality of this narcissistic friend that you had in high school who would mean girl you and gaslight you. Like, it's really interesting when, I have like this whole love your business process where we talk about the relationship with your business, and we'll say, what does it feel like? And where have you felt that way before? And it's really eye-opening to people. So it's everything from narcissistic friends to, parents, caregivers, coaches. It's fascinating.
I think it's so important for us to, relationships are one of the things we yearn for and desire the most, that make us feel like we're alive, but yet it's the most foreign subject that we don't learn about in school, or get help around, even though it's such an important value for us to have people around us. I as you talked about, finding out these sort of histories from people, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're taught to just keep moving forward. Let's not keep looking backwards, and let's keep looking forward. But a belief that you have is like, we do have to look at the past. We don't have to stay in the past, but we do have to look in the past in order to understand where we're going. And sometimes even I've really found out, which is surprising, is like, where I thought I should be came from a trauma response rather than from an authentic destination that I truly wanted to be, and it wasn't until I experienced my second most major burnout in my life was during the highest revenue year of my business, which is not supposed to happen. Right. And I realized that I was actually building this Frankenstein of a business, not because it's the thing I wanted, this bigger and better business, but it was because of this, again, this piece of needing to prove myself rather than say the choices I'm making are in alignment with my values and alignment with the life I truly want to live, versus I need everyone to know I'm successful, and my mom to finally be proud of me, to do this entrepreneurial thing. What's the process that you take people on? Like, walk me through, what does it look like when you work with someone and they go to you and say, I can't seem to want to be visible in my business. Maybe I'm an introvert. They, make up some stories about, I think I'm just an introvert, not meant for business. I get that a lot because 80% of my clients are introverts. Or I can't seem to have boundaries over how I work with clients, and it's depleting and exhausting me every day. I think it's just a tool I need to learn, a new skill set I have to get practice on. Where would you start with someone like that? And how do you bring them into a clearer understanding of what's truly happening?
Yeah. And you're right. I think we have to look back in certain ways in order to get clarity about where we're at and what we really want to build. Right. So I have people who will come to me in a burn it down moment. They want to burn down their business. They've got this beautiful, successful business and they want to burn it down and start over. And I'm like, we can do that. Or we can sit with it a little bit and make it do and see, is this the business you really want? And can we make it work? Or can we learn a little bit here before because you're going to still bring you to the next venture, right? It's not the business, it's how we've created it. So I think the very first thing that we need to I talk to people about is the fact that this is not about blame mommy and daddy club. This is not about low vibe trauma work. It's not about any of that. It's about getting some clarity and understanding that your nervous system downloaded information that you don't always have access to, right? And that we can have a trauma response to, and it can be affecting our business on a day-to-day basis and not have any understanding of that whatsoever. We think we're fine, and the next thing we know, we've sent in a proposal that's $1,000 less than it was going to be, or someone invites us to speak and we're really excited about it and we pitched it, we wanted it, and we're stepping back from it, right? Our nervous systems react. And I think that's important for people to understand and for them to name it as trauma as opposed to something else, because it gives us a little bit of room to go, oh, that's not even me. Like, okay. So we look at that, and then we look at, what are some of the experiences that you had that you still think of now, because they're sitting there for a reason, and they might be impacting your visibility or maybe your trust of other people. When you want to get up on that stage, what comes up for you? Like, what's the voice running in your head? Where do you feel it in your body? And so we start to kind of like pull apart. I call it an emotional sustainability plan, because we have to identify, to educate that trauma is there, because most of the time people don't know what it is. The fact that it can, in fact, impact your business. Where some of these might be sitting. Who are those like inner kiddos that are attached to it? Like, is your 7-year-old the one that doesn't want to get on stage because she was made fun of? She's still there, right? So we need to talk to her as opposed to shutting it down. So we look at that too. So, and then we look at, is your revenue being affected? Is it the relationship with your clients? Do you feel like you give too much? There's no boundary. So it's a little bit different for each person. But I always ask people, I'm like, listen, you didn't start your business to step into a position where you are disempowered. You started this business for a reason. It's usually for, to feel a certain way, or to have something, or to finally put yourself in a situation where you have agency over your life. And if you find that you might be defaulting and handing over your power here, let's figure out why, so that you can get it back, and have the business that you actually want, and have the emotional sustainability plan for your business, as well as the financial plan and the marketing plan, the sales plan. It's important to have that. And so I'd like to say that there's this one formula that we do, but it's kind of not like that. It's a little bit of normalizing, educating, and taking a peek back, and then coming back to the present and seeing how those experiences affect your clients, employees, all the things, because it does.
Beautiful. Yeah, you're so right. This work is not cookie cutter, and it's certainly not paint by numbers, is it? It's very personal to each individual. And I think taking that necessary pause and taking the time to do it rather than rushing through it in an anxiety-driven way is going to give you the gifts of knowledge and self-understanding, which I think is one of the best portals for doing this is through entrepreneurship. I always say my first year of business was equated to 10 years of therapy because it puts you in positions to look at yourself and challenge yourself and see what's behind the way you behave in so many more ways than a kind of a monotonous job or a same ritual and routine, that we can sometimes have in a regular life, for sure.
Yeah, starting a business definitely is a high dive into personal development, whether you wanted it to or not. So I see it as a beautiful opportunity. I think you can heal through your business. And I think if you know that that's an option, and you're willing to take a look at it and notice some of those patterns and see how you can actually utilize them and partner with that 7-year-old, or partner with that, that trigger that comes up for you, as opposed to shutting it down, which is what we're taught to do, is to shut down our inner critic, right? To shut it down, slay it, kill it. I don't really think you need to do that. I think that there's a lesson there, and there's wisdom if you stop and ask that voice, okay, I hear you. What is it that you're looking for here? Like, what do you need? Why are you trying to get me off the stage? Why are you trying to get me out of the sales call? Like, what? So I think there's a lot of wisdom there available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to think of them as little children that exist inside me. And you don't talk to children like that, right? If someone had a fit, you don't go, shut up and go to your room. Hopefully not. You would go, what's wrong? What's happening for you? How can I help? And there's a gentler approach to that, which we forget as adults, that we're just, little kids in big clothes. And we still need to have that kindness and empathy, that we were potentially missing as children, and how we can reparent ourselves in that way as well. I'm also really fascinated by the work that you do when it comes to supporting people that don't have a therapeutic background. So this is sort of one of the things of why I spoke to you twice before this interview, because there was something that I've been thinking about for many years, which is that I am a coach. I'm certified to be a coach, but with the work that I do with reinvention and transition and career change and business building,
Mhm.
there are particular things that can come up for an individual that at times I don't feel like a responsible person to go there with my
Mhm.
clients because something doesn't feel ethical for me, something doesn't feel moral for me. And what I've learned to do is I've learned to sometimes stop programs halfway and recommend. I have a nice Rolodex of therapists and counselors and people who are very, very they're educated, right, and trained to do that deep work that I'm not supposed to be doing, and learning how to collaborate actually with other therapists to support my clients to ensure that they have both. They have a coach and they can have a therapist, and actually together
Mhm.
it could be a very, very powerful tool. And you have a program called Do No Harm,
Mhm.
which I really love. And I read through it a while back when I think you were promoting it.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, oh God, I really want to take this with Nicole because it's going to help me to feel more of how I can empower my clients without being fully responsible for their well-being at all times,
Mhm.
but know that there are resources and tools, and also look at the way that I'm operating in my own business, because in the online business world, especially when it comes to things like marketing and sales and who we're learning those tactics from, can
Mhm.
feel like we could re-traumatize people. It certainly traumatized me when I had to be sold to, or when I thought I had to sell in a certain way. And you're teaching people sort of how to not do that, how to not re-traumatize your clients, or how to not to run a trauma-free business that really helps your people, and in return also helps your own processes and how you get to profit. Um,
Mhm.
can you tell me about why this work has been a really important part of your offerings, and how you teach that work to people that want to run a trauma-free business?
Yeah, absolutely. It was something that revealed itself, as someone who you had a coach and was in, a lot of the online business circles. I got the privilege and the insight to be around a lot of folks doing a lot of good work, and I also was around a lot of people who were re-traumatizing themselves with the business practices because they were taught to hustle, they were taught to disempower themselves in their business, and that the only thing that mattered was the launch, the sale, the money, the client roster. Ooh, and it was really hard to see. And so then those people were then recreating these traumatic patterns. And so their clients then became like a commodity, like they became numbers. And so then they were starting to treat their clients in a way that wasn't ethical and in integrity. And so, as I began to see all this stuff happening, I went from working one-on-one with clients, because the majority of the people I worked with for the first 3 years of my business were founders. They weren't even in the online space. They were like PR agencies and, CEOs of mindset companies, like all these things. But peripherally, I kept seeing a lot of harm being done in these online spaces. And I had a lot of coaches who were coming to me, and healers and even therapists, who were starting a new kind of practice. And they were saying, I don't really want to do it that way anymore. And I recognize that my clients are showing up with trauma. And I kind of think maybe I have some in my business now that I've heard you speak once or twice. And so people kept asking me for a program where they could learn to care for themselves, but also be aware of how trauma might be showing up for their clients. It hadn't occurred to them to be concerned about how it might show up for their employees, or even how it might show up in the way that they market themselves, or how they promote themselves from a stage, that they can speak about their hero's journey, because we love a daggone hero's journey, right?
I do.
And that and that they can do so in a way that is not re-traumatizing of the audience, that there's ways to
Mm,
do that. And so I created this, program called Do No Harm Intensive, and we go through all that. We look at what trauma is and isn't, the anatomy of a traumatized business based upon the research I've done for the past 5 years, working with entrepreneurs and having, I've interviewed, I think, about 300 entrepreneurs at this point. Um, all of those pieces of it. And it's funny because people will enter the program, they say, oh, I thought we were going to talk about how to do no harm to my clients. I want to know how their trauma might be showing up, or how I can stay in my lane, and do no harm to them. But the whole point is that we have to look at it ourselves first for our business before we can then go do the work with others. And so we spend time with that. And then we look at how you can assess if let's say you're a coach who's a life coach, or someone who's doing some real kind of gray area work when it comes around trauma, how to really harness that trust that you've already built with this client, because there is some good work that can happen there. And also to know when that you need to perhaps to make a referral, like you having that list, like I was so happy when you shared with me that you have this referral list, because it's such high integrity to do that, because you cannot be all things for your client. Your client might want you to be all things because they like you and they trust you, but that is not the way to go and be in integrity, right? That would be a trauma response to think that you can be all the things, right?
Exactly.
So
proving myself again.
Exactly. And so that whole program is about all of those things, doing no harm to ourselves, to our clients, our employees, our marketing, our sales, all that, to make sure that we can be more trauma conscious, because there's no way to do no harm. It's not possible, but we can do less harm if we're intentional. And so it requires that we be trauma conscious.
I love that. I'm so happy that you're providing this work in a marketplace that really needs it, and especially if we are in, the business of helping, right? Coaches, service providers, anything to do with helping another human. What a wonderful tool to add to your tool belt, to really even expand the existing work that you're doing, and just know that you can feel good at the end of the day. Having a business that not only feels ethical and moral, but also maybe lift that pressure off your shoulders of needing to do business in a certain way that never really sat well with you to begin with, and have the permission to say, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to learn a better way, so that I'm not contributing to that, perpetuating right that harmful narrative that I never wanted to be sold to that way, and still being able to be profitable, and better, building a trustworthy, audience that trusts you because you are doing your business in an ethical way.
Yeah. Every day people ask me for recommendations for copywriters, business coaches, sales coaches, social media managers, therapists who understand business. There's not a lot of us. Call me. I want to talk to y'all. I need some people for referrals too. Every day I get asked for referrals, and I would love to build this list out even further to say, yes, this copy editor went through do no harm. They're trauma conscious.
Yes.
Here, go talk to them. But I don't have that list yet, not fully, because there's more time that we need to go, more people need to go through it. But it makes me feel wonderful to be able to say, this person understands, they've been through this program, and I can say to you that at least they're a trauma conscious copy editor. So here you go.
Exactly. Yeah. What a great curated list, that a directory of trauma-informed service providers. I would love to get my hands on that list as well when you have it, for sure. Talking about connecting with you, I think people who might be listening to this interview would be encouraged to find out more about the resources that you offer, especially when they start to think about, maybe there is some trauma that I need to be working out, but I'm not quite sure what the first steps I should be taking. And I know that you have some wonderful tools and assessments on your site. What are some of the places that people can find out more about your work and get some support in working some of that trauma, trauma questions out, and how it's affecting their business right now?
Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, there's an aha, oh shit, now what, right? So I like for people to stay in the aha as much as possible, and don't worry about the oh shit yet. So, so ways that you can do that is you can go to my website, which is nicole.lewis-keeber.com, and there is a trauma and entrepreneurship assessment. I can make sure I send you the link so you make it easier. That's a really great place to start. It's a free assessment you can kind of look at and start to dip your toe in the water of figuring out, could there be something here that I need to look at? That's there. There is also my book that just got published in April. It's How to Love Your Business. And it talks about how childhood trauma can impact our relationship with our business. And it takes you through exercises in the book of where you can begin to, again, dip your toe into the water, start to consider it, at your own pace, and start to identify what relationship you have and if it's working for you, and if it's not, what you can do. So, those are two pretty easy places to get started.
Perfect. And we'll make sure to put the links in all the
Mhm.
places that we're featuring this interview. Thank you so much for taking the time to just have a deep conversation about this with us.
Yeah.
And I think for everyone watching, if something hit well for you in your heart and something felt meaningful for you that you learned today, please share it with us in the comments. I'll make sure Nicole sees the comments and make sure that she sees what people are getting from this conversation as well. And by the way, we'll also put Nicole's Instagram channel, which I love following. She does some wonderful IGTVs, and it's always nice to just watch someone talk out these things rather than read a blog at times. And I think you do a wonderful job of just educating. And that's what marketing can be, isn't it? Just
Mhm.
educating and planting seeds, which is what my mentor, Pam Slim, always says. It's just all about planting seeds and letting
Mhm.
people grow at their own pace. So thank you for
Yeah.
doing the wonderful work that you do.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here.